Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Muckrake Podcast. I'm Yates, Sexton. I'm here with Nick Hauselman. I say it all the time. These shows in this era are completely jam-packed. Just to give a preview, Tom Homan taking $50,000 in bribes from the FBI is it's in the D block today. So You're going to want to hang around for it. A reminder for everybody who's listening to this, head over to patreon.com/muckrake-podcast, support the show, become a patron, gain access to the weekend editions on Friday. Nick, before we get into any of this stuff, obviously we have to talk about the memorial service and everything around it. How are you doing? Because I'm beat down. Like, what is going on right now is literally just beating the shit out of me. How about you?
Yeah, well, I was trying to sort of reflect a little bit on why it felt that way all weekend long. Didn't even really want to do much. Just kind of hunkered down. And I'm kind of wondering if, not that we talked a little bit about this notion of a civil war, and I'll have more ideas about that in a little bit. But, I think it's perhaps it is the anger and the vitriol response amidst a right-wing call for, religiosity to come bring us together. And amongst all of that, there's all these other terrible conflicting feelings that are coming out of that just make it feel dizzying, I suppose is the word.
It does. And, as someone who grew up in an extremist evangelical environment, and on top of that for years has been talking about, if you took MAGA, Christian nationalism, and added in militarism, if you got those three together in a room and they finally coalesced in the way that we've all been fearing they would, it would get really bad. And so for me, first of all, Nick, I having followed this stuff for a long time and having sort of connected the dots about where all this stuff could go, this memorial service on Sunday and a lot of the stuff that you and I are going to talk about today, it really was like a waking nightmare for me.
Mm-hmm. Waking nightmare.
A waking nightmare. Like walking around, living my life, turning this thing on and being like, holy shit, this is what we're dealing with. For those who, I hope the people listening didn't actually watch this thing, unless you're the type of political sicko who wants to really be abreast of this and really, really be on top of it. Charlie Kirk's memorial was held in Glendale, Arizona, where tens of thousands of supporters gathered for fireworks and revelry and music. And on top of that, some of the most disgusting and dangerous speeches that I have heard from the modern right-wing mainstream Republican environment in a long time. Nick, we're going to start here, unfortunately, with Stephen Miller. And I think if you really want to understand what this thing was like, you have to go straight to the source.
The storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength. And the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. Erica is the storm. We are the storm. And our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion. Our lineage and our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry. Erica stands on the shoulders of thousands of years of warriors, of women who raised up families, raised up city, raised up industry, raised up civilization, who pulled us out of the caves and the darkness into the light.
Yeah, Nick, I don't know. I thought the original version in German and black and white sort of carried a little bit more heft and weight, but watching this second-rate Goebbels wannabe use this opportunity to test out his chops, it's pretty nauseating.
This notion of the storm, I am the storm, is literally paraphrased right from a Goebbels speech. And it's also a QAnon trigger as well. So here we are, and you can hear it from his voice. And, it's weird is that he has no expression on his face. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, you'll see it there, where he can project and he can portray a lot of the anger and disgust that they're looking for, that is trying to tap into for the base. But there's nothing on his face. And so it's really disarming in a way to see that happen, the way he can perform this. And again, the whole thing, this whole Sunday, dedication to Kirk's life, ended up either being a toxic mix of political rally and like religiosity as well, and manipulation of things, but nothing really about the words that people wanted to pretend that they were about, in terms of anything about, we had a notion of forgiveness for a second from Erica Kirk. But so much of this ended up being, they had pyrotechnics going on when they introduced her. But there's just no sense of what's appropriate, solemnity, seriousness. None of these things exist there, and it just provides It's sad to see this and to see what people consider appropriate for a commemoration.
You know what it made me think about, Nick? It made me think about, and I'll get to the Erica Kirk forgiveness thing here in just a second. It made me think about a lot of the funerals I've been to, and I'm sure you have as well. Occasionally, somebody will make a joke at a funeral, and it sort of breaks the tension a little bit, and maybe even it helps you remember the person who's involved. But if you go to a funeral and you start talking about the people who did this and how they're going to be visited with vengeance and force and anger, I would be in the audience feeling like, oh, this is a lynch mob.
Yeah,
that's what this is. It's trying to whip people up into a frenzy to go outside and then go down maybe to the jail where the person who did it is being held, and then basically use mob justice in order to kill them and make an example out of them. And what I realized watching this entire thing, first of all, you're exactly right when it comes to Stephen Miller. The man, this sniveling worm, doesn't have gravitas. All he has is pure hatred and a penchant for cribbing and, stealing the words of past fascist. That was one of the most fascist addresses I've ever heard, and thank God he doesn't have any charisma, or else we might be in some real trouble. But we'll talk about all of the sort of, I don't even know what to call them. Faux pas doesn't even begin to cover it. Like, this was not a memorial service. This was a revival for Christian nationalism and MAGA extremism to come together, get on the same page, and to take Charlie Kirk, turn him into a martyr, and to take advantage of it. And, if you look at this, Nick, I read the Washington Post editorial today, which was like, Erica Kirk showed us the right way, and that's the direction we're going to go in. She got on stage and said that she forgave her husband's killer, which, fine. But that is not what happened at this thing. This was literally a fascist rally. And Nick, I've been studying this stuff for over a decade now. And let me tell you something. I have not seen a pure distillation of mainstream Republican fascism than I did in this entire thing. And you're about ready to play a clip here of Tucker Carlson. And by the way, this was just an all-star game of American fascists. And listen. Yeah, it's a murderer's row, literally. And think about how it's being framed as a moment of forgiveness and healing. And then, listen to this type of horseshit.
Ultimately, he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago.
Okay, and this is his favorite story, Jerry. I want to point that out.
His favorite story.
Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about, what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
Nick, I've seen this clip. I watched this speech, and just watching it again really got to me. But before we dive into the deeper ramifications and what was happening here, do you, as a specialist here at the Muckrake Podcast, do you want to maybe shed a little bit of light on what Tucker Carlson was saying between the lines here?
Yeah, well, let me first ask you, how many Romans do you think were sitting around at that time eating hummus in dark rooms?
Not a lot. Not a lot.
Not a lot, right? So now we're trying to figure out, and if I'm not mistaken, and as far as I can tell, it's not in my Bible, but the Romans were the ones that put him up on the cross and decided to kill Jesus. Is that
well?
Is that
If you pay attention to the official accounts, they were doing it because the Jews who betrayed Jesus gave him to the Romans. They didn't even particularly want to do it. They were almost pushed into doing it, which, by the way, shaped the entirety of what happened once Christianity merged with Roman power and then went over to take over the world, is because of the story you just told.
Right. And so now we got to try and figure out exactly why he wants to tell this story at a memorial for someone who was assassinated politically in front of everybody and all these cameras. And so, the idea that he would then do this, and then with that sniveling laugh, which indicates alien life form, something wrong with him. I don't know what it is. It's just it was beyond the pale in my mind. I couldn't believe, and then people were laughing and people were cheering and people were excited to hear this part of the story because, again, what you said was exactly right. This was a stirring of hatred. This was a way, and that was what was so soul killing all weekend, was how quickly they wanted to then ramp up all manner of, like, they've been waiting for the 4 years since Biden had been elected president to sort of, this is their sledgehammer moment, the Reichstag fire, all of these things in one. We'll have to talk about Kimmel in a second, because I think that he just ended up being a bystander in all this, and this happened to be him. But to use this whole trope about the Jews are sort of in control of media, they're the ones who are getting all this stuff and then stirring it up into violence. We've already heard about Soros, and they want to go after him and declare a lot of these groups illegal. It just made it was like the chef's kiss of white nationalist Christian, authoritarianism.
So I want to get into what's happening with Tucker and why he did this particular thing. But before we get into the historical and the current socio-political thing that's happening here, Nick, what you just brought up in terms of the tone of this, I think is actually really important. And I think it's something that, like, this podcast allows us to really drill down on. We talked about, after Kirk's assassination, how the right wing was maneuvering and fighting with one another over how to capitalize off of this thing. And by the way, for the record, Nick, you've been doing this with me for years. Am I like really, really happy giving, like, mainstream neoliberals, like, props at all? Do I ever give them, like, any sort of, like, really good daps?
Do you ever? I mean, maybe sometimes. I don't know.
You'll occasionally do something right. You know what I'll give them credit for? If one of their colleagues or one of their friends was murdered, if they held an event to commemorate them, they wouldn't show up and try and capitalize on it. At least not so openly, right? They would come out with a solemn tone. They would give a speech that would be more about the person and more about trying to heal or whatever. This thing revealed the animating energy behind the right, which is that you have a bunch of very, very selfish, capitalistic, narcissistic motherfuckers who cannot help themselves. Like, that tone from Tucker, like, that is one of the best examples, and what we'll talk about with Trump in a minute, of them not actually caring about who they're there to, quote unquote, honor. They're all there to do something, laughing about their friend getting killed or behaving like this because he got killed. It reveals something about them, that there's something gone. There's a humanity that's missing. And the reason that Tucker gave this, I guess you would call it a speech, is because Tucker is currently making a shit ton of money by appealing to neo-Nazi Groyper types. And basically, he is the person who is making money off subscribers and products and all this stuff by talking about the Jews and Israel without totally going over the Niagara Falls like a Nick Fuentes. He'll hint, nudge, nudge. But what you just watched there was an attempt to say very, very quietly, right? Very, very cryptically, to say that Charlie Kirk was killed by a Jewish conspiracy. And that has been constant in the far anti-Semitic right. And what Tucker just did right there was to try and mainstream that and try and dog whistle as many people as humanly possible.
Well, let me ask you this, Jared. I don't know if you look at the rundown of the entire memorial. Anybody else from Charlie Kirk's family speak?
No, just Erica Kirk.
Yeah. So, it was, why was RFK Jr. speaking? Like, it was so obvious that they were going to just manipulate this into a political rally and bent on vengeance and anything else that was supposed to commemorate this person's life and what they are trying to now shape the life of, because it is scary what they tried to now make him become. They're turning him into their version of Martin Luther King.
Yep.
I remember I referenced him a couple episodes ago, and only in the sense of like popularity and influence, because with the social media, he might even have more influence than Martin Luther King did then. But I don't think I necessarily recognized at that moment that they were going to now turn him into their generation's version of that. This is their generation's JFK. Like, that's what's going on here, but it never in a more cynical way where it's so obvious what they're trying to do with this. And the fact that they wouldn't even have anybody that really knew him per se. I even want to bring this up. Van Jones came on CNN to discuss a message that Kirk had just sent to him right before he got, or they found out they sent it to him before he was murdered. Before Kirk was murdered. And it was a really reconciliatory tone. He really wanted to connect. And apparently, they've been at odds with each other for a long time. So I'm going to choose to believe that Kirk was probably sincere in the really nice things he was saying about to Van Jones, which then indicates clearly to me that a lot of this is just for the money. It's just a grift. What he was saying and the inflammatory things, and we've already covered a lot of it, it was just for the money. That's all it was for. And, and I'm actually giving him credit now to think that maybe deep down he had some sort of moral code and religiosity that would help him be a better person. But makes it all the more worse when he's willing to go out in public and lead people and influence people with all the other shit he was saying.
I think you're giving him too much credit.
Okay.
And I think it boils down to something. And you'll notice there were some articles that came out after Kirk was killed. One mainstream liberal after another was coming out of the woodwork to be like, this was the Charlie Kirk that I met at this event. We had an off-the-record conversation. Here are the texts I got from him. It's much more about the commentariat class. These group of people who all sort of know each other and they treat each other in this shallow transactional way. And here's like, did Kirk believe the extreme things that he said? I absolutely believe that he did. He dedicated his entire life to it. But let me tell you something. If Charlie Kirk, like let's say that Van Jones would have talked to CNN and gotten Charlie Kirk a job on CNN as one of the personalities or one of the regular guests, Charlie Kirk still would have peddled the same horse shit, the same racist, misogynistic, nationalist horse shit that he did. But you know what he would have done? He would have moderated it a little bit in order to tune it to what CNN wants or how, what it's looking for its audience. The entire point is that they do have sincerely held beliefs. It just so happens that all of them, including Donald Trump, including Tucker Carlson, who has worked for every network, by the way. He's worked for every network, which I think gives him the privilege of getting a free sub on his next visit. Basically at this point, it is a group of people that are both serious about what they're doing, but they're also grifters in the way that they're trying to self-service themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And by the way, The other thing that was going on with Charlie Kirk is that they're turning him into this martyr that was like the man of steel, that his bones literally stopped.
Oh, that's an incredible new thing for sure.
And Jared, we don't have to belabor it too much. I went on a deep dive on the forensics. I really did, because I've watched more interviews with Marine snipers and Navy SEALs than I care to admit. They're trying to say, and a member of the Turning Point USA, a higher up, had said he got permission from the doctor and the family to violate HIPAA to discuss the details. He said that they found the bullet in his body and it had supposedly hit off of his spine and then stopped. And have you seen the pictures of a 30-06 bullet? If you haven't by now, it is bigger than my hand. It's like huge. It's long and it's really thick. These bullets do not stop when they get hit, when bones get in the way. And that's what they're trying to say now, is that that's what it did, because otherwise more people would have gotten killed when it went through him and then through the tent behind him and, whatever.
Do you know what they're trying to do there? Just to give it a little bit of context.
Sure, we'll go ahead.
So here's a weird thing that happens in the evangelical world, is that they like to borrow things from Catholicism. So Protestantism and Catholicism have always been, at loggerheads. They've always fought. Millions have died because of it. We don't need to get into all of that. They love to borrow things from it. So in this case, Charlie Kirk, Nick, he performed a miracle. And if you are going to be canonized as a saint in the Catholic Church, you have to perform miracles. So one of the things that they're doing is this weird synergy between Protestant evangelicalism and Catholicism. They are trying to say, without realizing that they're saying it, that Charlie Kirk was a saint. And if evangelicalism or Christian nationalism had saints, they would already be pushing for him to be sainted at this point.
And this brings up another interesting point, because the Pope slides into this whole thing. I don't know if you saw this reporting, but there was the Cardinal in New York had gone on and on about how Charlie Kirk is the next St. Paul. I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know who St. Paul, why is he a saint? Do you know?
I mean, he was like one of the founding members of the church and used the gospel to spread.
Okay, so it's Paulie 2 times, whatever thing. All right, anyway, St. Paul. So I'm going to go to hell for that one. But so St. Paul, he compared him directly to that, the new St. Paul, and the Pope is now going to replace that cardinal. Now, I think that this guy in New York had some other issues that were pretty, let's say, not necessarily open-armed to a lot of people.
I would just say that basically anybody at this point who has reached that level, they have done some unsavory things.
Yeah, and it's at certain ages as well. You're going to find a lot, especially if you're around like in the 80s and 70s. So anyway, the point being that the Pope stepped in and said, okay, we're not going to tolerate that. I think maybe he recognized a little bit of what Charlie Kirk stood for, because whether or not he said some nice things or referenced the Bible, the naked politicization of these things was really apparent no matter what you want to say. Right. And he would be in these church, settings, encouraging people to vote, encouraging people to reject anything on the Democrat side. Like, that's not really the appropriate thing to be doing in those situations. And at least the Pope recognized that.
Well, let me say one thing, and something you just said made me realize, it's weird how things click into place. As we're getting ready to also hear how Donald Trump honored, I'm putting heavy quotes around, honored Kirk. You know what I just realized in watching this, and it didn't occur to me until right now? If it would have been someone besides Charlie Kirk would have been on stage doing the exact same thing.
Okay. Yeah.
He would have used someone's murder to go ahead and push his agenda too. So I guess in a way that sort of squares the circle. But here's the president of the United States of America. Also, by the way, Nick, behind bulletproof glass, which is very fun. But yeah, we'll listen to a brief little clip from this, but then I'll give you a basic summary of what I saw from the president.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Yeah, he's funny. He's a funny guy, Nick.
The Democrats, the liberals with progressives, whatever you want to call those people, us, whoever, we're fighting for everybody, right? We want sort of equality. We want people to be represented. The other side, these guys want to win.
That's it.
Somebody has to lose, right? Yep. That's their whole MO. And that's probably why it's so successful at this point. And it really puts people who are on the other side a little bit at a disadvantage, is because they're, supposedly we would be fighting for him to be able to say that and say whatever Kirk said and all those things. They're allowed to say it. It's their right, whatever. And they are the opposite. They want to now take whatever we're trying to do and sort of turn it against us and then defeat it. And I don't know. That's an interesting proposition when you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, it really lays out the groundwork for exactly what you need from, some sort of an opposition. And, Trump's speech, I guess you would call it, Nick, I've watched almost everything that he's ever said in public. This was a stump speech, is what it was. He, I guess, talked a little bit about Charlie Kirk. He lied about him talking to him. Would it shock you to hear him say that the last time he talked to Kirk said, sir?
Sir, yeah.
Sir. And then you add on to that he also used Kirk's death to go ahead and frame his policies, saying that Kirk would want him to solve the problem in Chicago. At one point, he even said, tomorrow we're going to hold a very special, historic press conference talking about, we figured out where autism comes from, and we know Charlie cared about this, and I'm going to be so sad not to see him in the front row. That's where he would have been, even though he wouldn't have been at this thing. And what happened is that Trump kept using that, and then at some point brought Erica Kirk, the widow, out on the stage, posed with her, supposedly consoling her, took her off. Well, at one point, I think they played God Bless America or God Bless the USA or whatever. He sang along with it. He pantomimed. He was having a great time. He then ushered her off the stage and then posed and vamped for the crowd a little bit. This was a shocking thing to see from the President of the United States of America. And I know that we shouldn't be surprised, but to see the lows that this man is capable of, the new lows that he's capable of, it somehow or another, it still shocks the system every time you see it.
Oh, I know. And the fact that he couldn't even help himself, because I know they wanted to sort of probably surprise us or, call this a press conference to talk about the vaccines and autism, which nothing screams. This is
Tylenol.
Right. Well, nothing screams this is of vital national importance than scheduling something one of these kind of press conferences at 4 p.m. Eastern. But yes, they're going to try and say that Tylenol is a cause. Now, you have to understand the only thing that pregnant ladies can take if they have a fever is Tylenol, and safely. And if they have a high fever while they're pregnant, it's really bad for the fetus. It's like the thing that you don't want to risk having. So now you're going to end up having, I have no doubt, pregnant women who are not going to take Tylenol if they're having fever issues during their pregnancy, and that's going to cause all manner of complications for a drug that's been around for 100 years, over 100 years. They're also trying to say that there's a drug that is in parallel to chemotherapy that they use that's going to cure autism.
Yep.
And I just have to say that they're whether or not it seems a little anecdotal whether you can find examples of this actually working or not in terms of for something that it's helped that helps cancer. I don't know if that's really the case, but they're going to try and definitively probably say that as well. So it really is, it's troubling having been around a lot of this and knowing what vaccines do. It's going to cause as many problems as anything that Trump will do to the Constitution.
It's incredible. Also, before I dive any deeper into this, as an autist, I want to say, fuck these people. The idea that this is the most pressing thing possible, that, obviously autistic people do not live healthy lives. Meanwhile, autistic people are one of the things that keep this country going. Yeah. And keep it growing. We don't know. The Tylenol thing is so batshit insane. This drug that hasn't been proven to do anything. And by the way, you can't really study this stuff very closely. You can't experiment on pregnant women. It happens to be unethical, but they don't care. They just want an announcement that they'll be able to, promise. And by the way, they use Charlie Kirk's dead body in order to promote it. Like it's insane to watch this stuff take place. And on the subject of Trump, by the way, Nick, a couple of days ago over on Truth Social, everyone's favorite social media site, he posted out of nowhere in a really bizarre message, and we'll talk about the background of this. Pam, which is Pam Bondi, Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old stories last time, all talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam, Shifty, Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who's never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him and there's a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsey Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now, President DJT. Nick, an interesting message from the President of the United States of America talking to his Attorney General, who is supposed to be independent from the President. What is your take from this? Because this is so wild and it's barely even being covered.
Well, there was a report that the DOJ was caught completely off guard by any of this, directions that he's giving to Pam Bondi. You forgot the colon, by the way. It's Pam colon.
Pam colon.
Which is important. So I am of the mind, I think as most people are, that he meant to send her, this is a direct message, not a public thing to do. And God, if they're going to try now to bring any cases against these people, they will simply trot out this this memo or this note, whatever, to her and prove that it was a completely political, attempt to try and, harm his enemies, and rooted in nothing, where we already found out that the Virginia Attorney General had nothing to charge Letitia James with when they looked into it. And that's why he stepped down. He beat Trump to it, right? And the fact that Trump couldn't even handle that much is just indicative of how thin-skinned this guy is and not suitable for the job. So it is. They just continue. Now, again, the question here is that I don't even know if he necessarily wanted the case. I think he just likes when people announce investigations on people.
Yeah, that's right. And Nick, this is one of those stories. It is so batshit insane that the president of the United States of America is directing his attorney general to prosecute his political enemies. That's insane. That's literally like, that's Nixonian level. Goodbye, you're done. Good luck on the helicopter. Enjoy your life. Sell a few books. Try not to go to prison level stuff. Okay, so I don't want to take away from that because that's the large thing here. But let's also look at something else, Nick. Okay, so let's say this was supposed to be a direct message. Number one, it's crazy as hell that the president of the United States of America is sending a message in public that he was trying to DM. That's wild. Number two, okay, aren't they supposed to follow official channels for their communication? So here you basically have another case of another member of the Trump administration skirting around public records. Mm-hmm. Next thing, what the hell is this rhetoric if this is actually a private message from the president? Like, this is, so you're telling me that the way that Trump posts on social media is the way that he sends directives to his subordinates? Really? So the Attorney General of the United States of America gets a message from the President of the United States of America. It's written like a crazy-ass social media post that involves nicknames of his political enemies. And by the way, at one point even says this person should have this job. They like you, trying to somehow or another influence this. Like, this is one of those peeks behind the curtains that if this was actually supposed to be a direct message, that's not only illegal, that's not only unethical, that is telling about what is happening in the halls of power right now. Like, reading this, it makes me feel like I have lost my mind.
Oh, I know. And then it's just more projection, because the only reason why he wants to find some sort of like fraud, mortgage fraud, or filing issues is because that's what they got him on with Letitia James's case in New York, right? And the other case, when he had 34 counts of felony counts, it was like he had a robust defense. He went through a whole trial of his jury of his peers. Like, that was all. He had a chance to defend himself, and they simply couldn't, and they didn't, because there wasn't anything to defend. He was guilty of those things. So the idea now, because we also have more news on this as part of this projection, which they might not even realize, was that we have Tom Homan basically doing exactly what he's trying to accuse everybody else of. He wants Lisa Cook, who's on the board of the Fed, to be fired because she's above reproach in that job. You can't have any whiff of anything going on with any kind of paperwork you might be filling out about stuff. Well, I would think that Tom Homan is under at least the same amount of standards of behavior that she would be. And here we have, the reporting. I believe the reporting. I choose to believe the reporting because, again, you risk being sued into oblivion if you lie about this stuff, right? As we're seeing, I'm not sure we even put a button on the Jimmy Kimmel stuff, but here's a guy, Tom Homan, who literally took $50,000 in a kava bag. Do you have kava where you are?
Listen, I love kava.
Oh,
I discovered kava like about a year ago. I'm never looking back.
Yeah, the Mediterranean diet, Jared.
It's fantastic. Kava's, I give it a thumbs up.
So yeah. I have no problem that we're then getting some free advertising on this whole thing. But
as soon as I heard that Tom Homan took $50,000 from the FBI in a sting operation, which the entire story, by the way, is the DOJ covered it up and got rid of it. The Border Czar of America had this taken away. But then when I read further and heard it was in a kava bag, I'm just laying my cards on the table. I got hungry. And I'm having kava sometime in the next week.
Yeah, for sure. I almost went today. But if there ever was an admission of guilt, it's receiving $50,000 in a bag from a restaurant. And if we were going to create a screenplay, Jared, and we're creating a character like a politician who's dirty and he's corrupt and whatever. Tom Homan, that's the guy. We would have to cast him literally as himself, and we'd give it, Tom Homan as himself on the screen in the TV version of this, because he's right at essential casting for like the guy who's going to take. And by the way, kind of cheap, 50 grand. I hope it was the opening salvo to kind of wet his beak a little bit, to so to say. So, because they were talking about $1 million. Now, is there an issue with the fact that he wasn't a public official at that moment? This is what the FBI felt, and they thought, let's wait and see, and then we'll get him completely red-handed. And will the Trump administration simply state unequivocally that he's not in charge of giving out contracts, which seems kind of hard to believe because he's the head of his department. But that's what they're going to say. And guess what? I think that's where we're going to end up.
So the background on this, for people who haven't read up on it, is that before the second Trump administration took office, Homan had taken this $50,000 from the FBI in a sting operation, which they were posing as business owners and business executives who were trying to attempt to get Homan to help get contracts with the new Trump administration. And first of all, you took the words out of my mouth. $50,000 for a czar next to the president who is basically overseeing his secret police. Let's get a fundraiser together.
Yeah, right.
Let's do a GoFundMe. I think the Muckrake universe could go ahead and bribe this guy.
Yeah.
I don't even think that'd be that much of a $50,000. I mean, listen,
like an Austin Powers movie, like the bad guy wants.
That's incredible. That is, and we keep seeing this, by the way, Nick. I mean, when you actually look at it, these people are so openly corrupt and they're so corruptible that they are getting got on the cheap. And here's what I would ask you, Nick. If the FBI caught this guy in a sting, then tell me if I'm wrong here. Tell me if my logic is completely out of left field. Then that means that the FBI had a reason to believe that Tom Homan was open to being bribed, correct?
Correct.
Do you think that if you took a bribe for the first time and it was a bribe by the undercover FBI, that was the first bribe that you've ever taken?
I don't think so.
Wouldn't it help to find out if the border czar, who is in charge of now the world's like 5th largest army, more or less, a secret police that, by the way, has one tie after another to the private prison complex and tech security firms? Wouldn't it be something if the Department of Justice actually figured out who this guy has been involved with, who he might have taken money with, how those contracts would have gotten? I will say, and Nick, again, this is like in the D block of this show.
Yeah.
This is literally, it feels like a lost Indiana Jones movie where Indiana Jones is just moving some sand around and he finds the tip of a pyramid. You know what I mean? And then there's a flash forward and you suddenly find the biggest pyramid with God knows what inside of it. This could have the potential to be just something that like sort of fizzles out and nobody talks about. It could be one of the biggest public corruption scandals that we've ever heard of. And it just got, the DOJ just said, no, we're done. He's our guy. And for all of it, the Trump organization, Trump administration, and MAGA is a giant organized crime family. That's how they operate. That's what they do. This is the initiation into it. You have to be corrupted and you have to be corruptible. And so in a way, he passed the test. And meanwhile, what is happening with our money? What's happening with our country? It could be one of the largest scandals that might never even be uncovered.
I hear you. I mean, how many kava bags are out there? I'm dying to know.
Not enough kava bags, in my opinion.
And he knew enough. He's experienced enough to know that you got to put it in the bag, and then under the table, you got to hand it to me and I got to look around. I mean, I don't know what the hell. I can't wait to see that. Hopefully there's video, not just audio. But that'll come out. I have no doubt at some point. I mean, it seems like there's still just enough FBI people who want to treat the country like a democracy and maybe a safeguard, be a backstop. Just enough of those that maybe there's still some people out there who are going to be like sort of deep throat to reporters and give them some of this stuff, because when that ends and they were able to root out all of that, then we'll never know anything about any of this.
Well, we could very well never know the full extent of the corruption here.
Yeah,
that is a very distinct possibility. I sometimes I think about that, Nick. I think about, you go back into the robber baron era. we'll never know the full extent of that. I mean, not only was it, people taking bribes, not only was it these, giant trusts, breaking one law after another, but on top of that, like the Supreme Court, the things they put into place that were completely corrupted, including the idea that corporations are people, which laid the foundation later on for Citizens United. Like, we know about that stuff, but the amount that we don't know from that period about what exactly took place, this Trump era, the corruption that is right underneath all of the fascism, Christian nationalism, all of the neo-Nazism that we're talking about, this is like sitting on an ocean of corruption. There is, I don't know that there's ever been a parallel to this before.
But here's the thing. It opens the right up to be able to accuse the FBI of deep state chicanery, yep. Right? And here's another example. They're just trying to get us. And it's like, Trump spent the entire first administration having to deal with Russia and all this different stuff. They were trying to pin it on him. And here they go. Now they're trying to do it all over again. And they've already convinced so many people of that it's easy to sort of say, oh, we can dismiss this. And it kind of reminds me of like what's going on with Jimmy Kimmel. I don't know exactly how much you dove into it from the last episode. I wasn't here, but the thing that was most shocking to me about that was that he didn't even say what they're saying he said. Kimmel didn't even say that the shooter was a MAGA person. All he said was that the MAGA spent the weekend trying to figure out how to disassociate themselves from him. That was it. That's not that inflammatory. And then they, by the way, Shevchik's brilliant joke about the fourth stage of grief being demolition, because he goes, after they asked Trump about how he felt about Kirk dying, his friend dying, he just went into a whole thing about this new ballroom they're building, which is getting bigger. So, this is really one of those things where I feel bad for Kimmel in the sense that it just happened to be him that week. They were able to kind of glom onto one thing from one of these guys. Didn't matter who it was. And bad timing. That, ABC is in the midst of, the affiliates are in the midst of trying to do a merger at the same time. So all of this stuff is truly frightening as it's moving toward the anger that they're tapping into is just manipulated in a way that it's not even reflecting reality.
No, it's not. I mean, they're having like the biggest manic breakdown that I've ever seen. And this is something, unfortunately, we're going to cover going forward because it's going to affect all of our politics and all of our lives. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of the Muckrake Podcast. We will be back with The Weekender on Friday. If you need us before then, and by the way, head over to patreon.com/Muckrake Podcast. Support the show. Gain The Weekender. You listen to the preview every week. We need your support, especially as we're under attack and everybody's under attack. All right, if you need us before then, you can find us on Blue Sky. Nick is at Nick Hauselman. I'm a JY Sexton. Be safe.